Taxi operators from several areas across the island are reporting that several roads have been blocked by debris as part of a protest they threatened from the weekend. Among the areas reportedly blocked are the Temple Hall Main Road in northern St. Andrew, the road leading to Old Stony Hill Road, Spanish Town Square, and parts of Portland and St. Mary. An operator from Spanish Town gave this perception of the situation in the old capital.
No, man, no, little more thing, brother. A no thing, brother. But then in the street, man. Spanish Town a dry up, man. Spanish Town dry up, man. You see what I say? I when I sleep, in a heart I town me live, So, Spanish Town dry up, general.
In Portland, another operator provided this update while apparently criticizing his colleagues in the corporate area for not following suit.
The whole over Portland a black. The whole over a black up, brother. Town man a joker.
And in St. Mary, one operator says he's on his way to Kingston to engage in a protest.
And then I St. Mary, I try to reach a town, and a copy say, the road them block up. Yeah, man, we are talking about debris block up. You copy that? All care, all this, all that in the road. But the copy say, I told me I have to do my protest. Yeah, man, and I told me I come do my protest. So I have to reach a town, so I try to reach the same way here. But
Taxi operators from Spanish Town, Portland, and St. Mary. Meanwhile, the police is advising persons to remain vigilant in light of what it says is an anticipated disruption to the public transport system on Monday. The JCF issued a statement on Sunday urging people to stay informed by monitoring public advisories and regularly checking its official social media pages for the latest updates. The JCF says parents should ensure their children are not left stranded. It says parents should plan ahead and make the necessary arrangements in light of the risk of transportation issues. The JCF says it's actively monitoring the situation and will provide periodic updates to keep the public informed. And the Transport Minister Vybz says he's aware that misinformation about the vexed issue of demerit points against transport operators who breach the Road Traffic Act is the driving force behind the threat of strike action.
I'm fully aware of the misinformation and mischief that is being circulated among transport groups in relation to an all-island strike for 5 days. I've been in touch with the transport operators. There has been a statement issued by the ITA, the Island Traffic Authority, to indicate that the matter in relation to their merit points are under review by the committee, and there's a meeting scheduled for this week. So any action would be premature.
According to Minister Vybz, the leaders of the various transport groups ought to do a better job of informing their members about the state of play regarding discussions to resolve the issue.
I am calling on good sense to prevail. The matter has come to my attention and I am dealing with it appropriately, and it will be part of the review of the Road Traffic Act, which is to be concluded by the end of June. A meeting will take place this week specific to that issue, and as usual, consultation, consensus and collaboration are the order of the day.
Vybz, Transport Minister. And the President of the Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contract Carriage, Willard Costley, says the association is not a part of the protests.
The Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contract Carriage was contacted by the High Command of the Jamaica Constabulary Force in relation to a demonstration to be held tomorrow by taxi operators. This demonstration, the association is not aware of and hereby will not advise or take part in. We therefore ask anyone who may be part of this demonstration will be doing so without the backing of the association.
Willard Costley, President of the Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contract Carriage. The Court of Appeal is set this morning to begin hearing arguments about whether Vybz Kartel and his 3 co-accused should again stand a trial for the 2011 murder of Clive Lizard Williams. The arguments are set to begin at 9:30 a.m. before Justices Mark MacDonald Bishop, Paulette Williams and David Fraser in Courtroom 1. The hearing is set to last for 5 days. Kartel, Sean Campbell, Andre St. John and Kahira Jones had their 2014 murder convictions overturned at the UK-based Privy Council in March this year. The Law Lords found that significant jury issues in the trial meant the convictions were unsafe and could not stand. The judges instructed Jamaica's Court of Appeal to determine whether a retrial should be held. Kartel and Andre St. John are being represented in the hearing by Isaac Buchanan. Bert Samuels will appear on behalf of Sean Campbell, while John Clark will represent Kahira Jones. The men will remain in custody pending the outcome of the hearing after a habeas corpus application on their behalf was rejected by Justice Andrea Thomas in the Supreme Court last week. Just over 60% of Jamaicans say PNP President Mark Golding should renounce his British citizenship. That's according to a recent Blue Dot poll. It's the first official measure of public opinion since Mr. Golding revealed he holds dual citizenship. Mahira Stewart has that story.
This was the PNP president's response recently as he reflected on whether he would be prepared to renounce his British citizenship.
I'm not moving on any bummy basis. I'm meditating on this thing, saying my prayers on this thing, and I'm listening to what is happening. I want a proper dialogue and conversation in Jamaica about dual citizenship, about who we are, about the millions of Jamaicans who live outside of Jamaica, many of whom are dual citizens, and how we plan to engage with them and deal with them and treat them. And when we get through that debate, if the preponderance of opinion is that I should, as leader of the PNP, as leader of the opposition, as Prime Minister in waiting, shouldn't have a dual citizenship, then I will give it up because I intend to serve Jamaica to the best of my capacity, and I'll give it up.
Mr. Golding now has a definitive answer from Jamaicans. They want him to give up the British trappings and privileges. When the Blue Dot pollsters asked 1,020 Jamaicans if Mark Golding should renounce his British citizenship if he plans to be Prime Minister, 61% of respondents said yes. Only 29% of respondents were prepared to countenance Mr. Golding's bid for Jamaica House while he maintains citizenship of a country that was once a colonial power. But it's not just a legal question that's facing the opposition leader. The dual citizenship saga has also complicated his political prospects. The Blue Dot pollsters found that 53% of respondents are now less likely to view the opposition leader as a potential Prime Minister of Jamaica owing to his divided loyalties. That's against the 31% of respondents who said the revelation of Golding's dual citizenship has made no impact on their perception of him as a future Prime Minister. Only 7% indicated that they were more likely to see him as a potential Prime Minister. There are also signs that the duality of Mr. Golding's citizenship is having some negative effect on how voters perceive the People's National Party. When asked whether all they have seen and heard recently changed their perception of the PNP, 31% said it had no change. The trouble for Mr. Golding is that 10% said it had somewhat negatively affected their perception of the PNP, and nearly 18% said it had very negatively affected their perception of the PNP. That combined negative perception stands at 28%. 14% had a combined positive perception of the PNP following the citizenship row. Now that Mr. Golding has an answer from the Jamaican people, the question on renunciation this week is sure to be, will he or won't he? The Blue Dot poll was conducted between May 22 and June 5. It has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%. Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
A prominent member of the Diaspora, Dr. Clovis B. Nelson, has lashed out at those of his counterparts who he's accusing of trying to sabotage Brand Jamaica. Dr. Nelson says there's a faction of the Diaspora hell-bent on destabilizing the country. Without calling names, he has labeled those persons insurgents. He says these persons are opposed to the Holiness Administration's progressive policies and are misusing the Brand Jamaica slogan to mobilize support for their various activities aimed at changing the government.
That very same group of guys who have been busy trying to discredit the government of Jamaica and drag the Jamaican flag into the gutters in America, all over the country, are now trying to use the slogan Brand Jamaica to lure more attendees to their next planned gathering in Washington, D.C.
Dr. Clovis B. Nelson, Diaspora member. Dr. Nelson says the slogan Branded Jamaica is meant to promote Jamaica's excellence in tourism and culture along with the progressive work of the government. He says it's not intended to be used for the deceitful promotion of division and chaos. He's calling on those in the diaspora to stand united in support of the work being done to advance the country. Chief Executive Officer of NCB Capital Markets Angus Young says high interest rates contributed to the entity's failure to raise the $5 billion targeted in its recent additional public offering APO. The APO raised half that sum, $2.5 billion, from 3,000 applications for the ordinary shares on offer. Despite falling short of target, Young believes the exercise was a success.
We consider the NCB APO a success because in an environment of high interest rates and very tight liquidity, where investors prefer bonds over equity, we were able to accept over 3,000 applications. These applications came in via 10 selling agents. Now, these selling agents would have issued independent professional valuations on NCB, which priced the stock at the mid-70s to the low 80s.
NCB says the proceeds from the APO are intended to reduce debt and strengthen capital flexibility at the financial holding company. Young says among the most pleasing aspects of the APO was the fact that many of the shares were taken up by employees of NCB.
One should also pay attention to the fact that the staff of NCB, who have the best seat in the house with respect to the inner workings of NCB, would have also oversubscribed the employee reserve pool.
That's Angus Young, CEO of NCB Capital Markets. Government Senator Dr. Sophia Longmore says a tiered approach to making Jamaica's sex offender registry public could benefit the country. She made the point last Friday on Nationwide at 5. Her comment follows the recent announcement by National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang that he has directed his ministry's legal team to review existing legislation to determine whether information about convicted sex offenders can be shared more broadly.
What I think we could also consider, to put it probably in another context, is a tiered approach to the offenses and to the level of publication of said offenders. Because at the end of the day, you remember when we used to have, and I have said it publicly in other spaces, especially when it comes on to our children.
Yes.
I think there is absolutely no line that should be drawn when it comes to the protection of our children, and that's a paradigm that I would always operate from.
Senator Longmore believes the publishing of the registry can aid in deterring persons from committing sexual offenses.
When you used to have public flogging, it worked because there's a sense of awareness, there's a sense of shame that goes with it. And that in and of itself gives a sense of justice. It goes the counter way. If someone knows they can get away with something and go along quietly, they can reoffend.
Dr. Sophia Longmore, government senator. Meanwhile, President of the PNP Patriots, Christopher Henry, says while he believes the registry should be accessible to the public, access should still be restricted.
Obviously, I want it as wide as possible. I think that the public on a whole should have access to the registry. I think what needs to be put in place is certain protocols in the access. For example, I would appreciate that the request for the information comes from somebody credible. They prove that there is a reason for the information, etc. And for example, if in our recent situation with the ride-sharing apps, the company is registered in Jamaica, is doing a background check, this person has applied, and they state the reason for applying. I don't want it just to be a free-for-all situation.
Christopher Henry, president of the PNP Patriots. The president of the Jamaica Agricultural Society, JAS, Lenworth Fulton, says recent rain across several parishes has provided relief to farmers who were reeling under drought conditions for several weeks.
The recent rains are more of a blessing to our farmers than anything else. The damage is minimal, and it is good for them to have these rains for both catchment of water and to give the crops and livestock a better lease on life. It has been very good that we do have these showers at this time.
Mr. Fulton says the rain has been so heavy in some parts of the island that some crops have suffered damage.
The crops that were damaged in a very minimal way were the crops that have been in advanced stage of maturity, like melons and cantaloupe, pak choy, cabbage, to name a few. But as I said, the damage was very minimal.
That's the JAS President, Lenworth Fulton. Overseas news now. Far-right parties rattled the traditional powers in the European Union with major gains in parliamentary seats, dealing an especially humiliating defeat to the French President Emmanuel Macron, who called snap legislative elections. Some ballots in the vote for the European Parliament were still being counted on Monday, but the outcome showed the 27-nation bloc's parliament membership has clearly shifted to the right. Italian Premier Giorgia Meloni more than doubled her party's seats in the assembly. And despite being hounded by a scandal involving candidates, the Alternative for Germany extreme right party still rallied enough seats to sweep past the slumping Social Democrats of Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Sensing a threat from the far right, the Christian Democrats of EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen had already shifted further to the right on migration and climate ahead of the elections. It was rewarded by remaining by far the biggest group in the 720-seat European Parliament and de facto brokers of the ever-expanding powers of the legislature. But the surge by nationalist and populist parties across Europe will make it much harder for the Assembly to provide legislation on issues ranging from climate change to agriculture policy over the next 5 years.